Heya Cryptozens, it's 10 p.m. Pacific time. My name is Nikodemus, and welcome back to the Crypto Overnighter, where we take a nightly look at the crypto, NFT, and metaverse space. And keep in mind, nothing in this show should ever be considered financial advice. It's November 10th, 2022, and I want to say happy birthday and Semper Fidelis to my fellow United States Marines. All right, enough of that. On with the news. European Union lawmakers voted on Thursday in favor of strict cybersecurity rules on crypto companies and related financial firms. And it wasn't even close. 556 to 18. Now, this bill is not new. It was first proposed back in 2020. And the issue was that the European Commission was concerned. Governments are always concerned, aren't they? So the European Commission was concerned because the banks were using the same sources of data. This is a handful of unsupervised cloud computing companies. And the banks are relying on these guys for data. So there's some question on just how effective the bill will be, because cryptocurrency is under a constant deluge of cyber attacks and hacks and scams. That's why there's some question on how effective a bill that regulates data is going to be. So this bill's name is Dora, and it stands for the Digital Operational Resilience Act. They call it a, quote, cornerstone of our work on digital finance in the European Union, making sure that we support innovation and do it in a safe way. Mairead McGuinness is a member of the European Commission. She was at a debate on Dora when she said, quote, protecting the financial system from cyber attacks and cyber fraud is vital. So what they're doing is that they're going to make it the responsibility of banks and financial institutions to monitor for cyber incidents as well as testing their defenses. This also means that the big tech companies that provide services must also submit to supervisory oversight. Now, this is all part of an agreement between the EU member nations and the European Parliament. And the Markets in Crypto Assets regulation comes into play here too. Because not only does Dora apply to banks and payment firms, it also applies to the crypto companies that will be regulated under MiCA, whenever that gets signed. Actually, Dora and MiCA were meant to be a couple. They were originally proposed as a package. Stephanie Young-Cordon is a French lawmaker. Some folks consider her to be a centrist. At any rate, she said, quote, after the vote on the Cryptocurrency Legal Act and blockchain, this is one more step towards Europe's digital sovereignty. This will protect European investors on the one hand, but it will also prepare financial enterprises against cyber attacks on the other. Now, this is a big adjustment for the crypto sector, and not everyone is in favor. On the one hand, there were more than $3 billion in hacks this year. On the other, people have privacy concerns. Ivan Sivic is a Croatian lawmaker. Privacy concerns would appear to be on his mind because he said, quote, when cryptocurrencies appeared, people went there because they thought they would be free from surveillance. If we regulate it now, we'll have another world where there will be controlled with biometric control. These measures are undermining the idea of cryptocurrencies. MiCA, Dora's companion legislation, is due to be voted on in a full session of the European Parliament this coming February. Also in Europe on Tuesday, a group of central bankers and financial regulators met to endorse their October report on stablecoins. And they did praise their October reports on stablecoins and regulating digital currencies. However, a decent amount of time was spent with the members of the European wing of the Financial Stability Board. They were talking about the need to regulate crypto based on the, quote, recent developments. The central bankers and regulators agreed that there was a need to regulate, quote, in light of recent developments, decentralized finance, trading platforms, and so-called crypto conglomerates and exchanges that vertically integrate multiple functions deserve urgent regulatory attention. Now, they don't call out FTX by name, but it's clear who they're talking about, FTX. So this was a group meeting between FSB Europe, as well as the leadership members of both the European Commission and the European Banking Authority. Now, these last two joined the regular meeting in Lisbon, and also expressed intentions to tightening things up as far as regulation for the digital asset space goes. The group is chaired by officials from Sweden's central bank, the UK's Treasury, and financial authorities from France, Germany, and the EU. Now, they suggested a recent FSB regulatory plan could be used to force conglomerates like FTX to break up, as well as forcing stablecoins to centralize. So this group, the FSB, they were instrumental in the deluge of global regulations that hit the financial sector after the 2008 financial crisis. Even though officials have been careful to warn that crypto can be risky for investors, still they've been known to downplay the risk to the financial system as a whole. And they do that because issues in the crypto space don't tend to impact the banking or insurance sectors. Attendees at the meeting discussed, quote, growing interlinkages between crypto asset markets and the traditional financial system. Now, back on our side of the Atlantic, we've got 3 crypto CEOs engaging with a member of the Senate over this whole FTX situation. Because if you ask the heads of Circle, Ripple, and Coinbase, they'll tell you. It's a lack of clear regulation from the government that's causing U.S. citizens to trade their crypto on foreign exchanges like FTX. So what happened is Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, was commenting on the FTX situation. And I often disagree with the Democrat senator when it comes to crypto, and I thought that was going to be the case here. But in fact, she is absolutely correct. She said, quote, the collapse of one of the largest crypto platforms show how much of the industry appears to be smoke and mirrors. We need more aggressive enforcement, and I'm going to keep pushing the SEC to enforce the law to protect customers and financial stability. And she's right. With all the noise that the Securities Exchange Commission makes about protecting consumers and financial stability, where were they? So then Brian Armstrong got involved. The CEO of Coinbase pointed out that FTX is not registered in the U.S., and he added that it was a lack of clarity from the SEC that was pushing U.S. trading offshore. Brad Garlinghouse, CEO of Ripple Labs, he joined in. He amplified Armstrong's words and pointed to Singapore as an example of how a regulatory framework could work. He said, quote, Brian is right. To protect consumers, we need regulatory guidance for companies that ensures trust and transparency. There's a reason why most crypto trading is offshore. Companies have zero guidance on how to comply here in the U.S. And here's where he draws that comparison to Singapore. Quote, compare that with Singapore, which has a licensing framework, token taxonomy laid out, and much more. They can't appropriately regulate crypto because they've done the work to define what good looks like, and know all tokens aren't securities, despite what Chair Gensler insists. Jeremy Allaire is the CEO of Circle. Now, he too jumped in, supporting Armstrong. He added that it's the lack of a clear regulatory framework that is pushing U.S. customers overseas. Jesse Powell, Kraken's co-founder, also had thoughts on the subject, but it was in a different thread. He echoed the opinions of others when he said, quote, U.S. lawmakers and regulators have some accountability too. You drove this business offshore because you refused to provide a workable regime under which these services could be offered in a supervised manner. Enforcement wrongfully focuses on convenient onshore good actors. Now, one example of what he's talking about could be seen in Coinbase. When Coinbase alerted the Department of Justice that there were some guys doing some inside trading, when that happened, the SEC decided to invite themselves along, and now Coinbase is in jeopardy from the SEC because they told Justice about a potential crime. So, speaking of the feds, word came down that in addition to investigations by the SEC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and the Texas Securities Board, FTX is also facing investigation from the Justice Department. And to be sure, all of the revelations that FTX was having liquidity issues has increased the scrutiny the troubled exchange is under. So if you've been listening these last few nights, you know how this story has gone. Questions were raised about Alameda's finances. Then CZ announced that Binance was dumping FTX's native token, FTT. Billionaires exchanged words. Caroline Ellison offered to buy all of CZ's FTT for $22 apiece. CZ said no. Then at some point, Sam Bankman-Fried decided to reach out to CZ. And what follows is that Binance agreed to acquire FTX. Now, Binance ultimately decided that FTX was in too much trouble for them to help and walked away from the deal. That's the point where Justice Department gets interested, because we already know from a Wall Street Journal report that Justice was looking into FTX. Well, now word comes that U.S. authorities are asking questions of Binance, specifically asking questions around their interactions in the last few days. Reportedly, Justice is asking Binance executive for insights into FTX's internal workings. Binance was in a position to look around. They were brought in by FTX, and presumably they were given a great deal of information about FTX's current financial situation. And it appears that Binance sent their due diligence crew in, completely unprepared for what they'd find. Much of it in the relationship between FTX and Alameda Research, which is one thing. The bigger problem is that it appears that customer funds were used for business purposes. FTX forgot that customer money is customer money. It's not exchange money. That said, a number of exchanges seem to work that way. Senator Sherrod Brown is a Democratic senator from Ohio. He was talking about FTX when he said, quote, "It is crucial that our financial watchdogs look into what led to FTX's collapse so that we can fully understand this misconduct and abuses that took place." And, as noted, FTX is a worldwide company. It doesn't specifically fall under the purview of the U.S. FTX US does, however. And their top lawyer has done the reasonable, intelligent thing. They've instructed FTX US staff to maintain their work-related documents. So it was Ryan Miller who instructed employees to preserve all their emails, their messages, documents, notes, any kind of artifacts to do with their work for FTX, FTX US, and Alameda Research. In the meantime, California's Department of Financial Protection and Innovation has also opened an investigation into FTX. They put out a press release late on Thursday that they didn't see a lot of detail in. They said that they were, quote, investigating the apparent failure of crypto asset platform FTX. They continued, quote, "The DFPI is the agency responsible for administering the state's lending and banking laws, the recent California Consumer Financial Protection Law, and the state's securities laws, which govern broker-dealers, investment advisors, and commodities." Now, one potential source of friction between FTX and California comes from the fact that FTX is not a registered money transmitter. The press release did ask anyone who was affected to file a complaint. In the meantime, we have news from the White House that the administration is aware of what's going on and is monitoring the situation. Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, was speaking to reporters during a press release when she indicated that the administration is aware of what's going on with FTX. She said they are, quote, aware of the recent developments on FTX and will continue to monitor the situation. Now, KJP, as she's known, said, quote, "The administration has consistently maintained that without proper oversight of the cryptocurrencies, they risk harming everyday Americans. This is something that clearly we monitor and that we see as an important issue. The most recent news further underscores these concerns and highlights why prudent regulation of cryptocurrencies is indeed needed." Now, this situation represents a heck of a fall from grace for Sam Bankman-Fried. He was a representative voice in the growing crypto contingent on Capitol Hill. He's known to rub elbows with congressional lawmakers, lobbying for the regulation of crypto. My understanding is the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act, once championed by SBF, is now effectively dead. Which makes sense, really. On a number of levels, FTX and Alameda Research were effectively bankrupt. They don't have a lot of power anymore. SBF's fortunes have been cut severely, which means a $500 million donation to a presidential election is probably a thing of the past. But also, given the scale of the fail, would you trust him on financial matters anytime soon? Most people wouldn't. Whether that's fair or not, it's probably going to be a while before Sam enjoys the position on the world stage he once held, if ever. And I'm going to leave it there for the night. I want to thank you, my listeners, because when you stop listening, I will stop talking. We'll see you tomorrow night.